What's going on, guys? My name is Kevin, and I never sleep, and today I'm getting back into making some more of my classic tutorial/creation videos in Blender, but in this case, Photoshop. Today, we'll be revisiting the Gfuel project, which will be quite similar to the last one, but here I will put the focus on creating the actual label for the Gfuel. The label has been most commonly asked about in my Discord, since the Gfuel tutorial last year seems to have drawn some passionate graphic designers to the community, which is pretty cool. So I will go more in depth on how to put the label together from bits and pieces of what I find on Google and Gfuel's own website. I will be remaking and copying the design from the recent Pewdiepie themed flavor of Gfuel here, formatting it so that it is flat and can be used as a texture in Blender. Then I will be adding splashes to add a little something to the tutorial project that I have not done before, while also learning fluid simulations for the first time myself. I'm hoping this answers any and all questions you have about it, and if it doesn't, feel free to leave a comment or join the Discord and ask in the Blender Help channel. Before we begin, please note that I am in no way associated or affiliated with Gfuel, and Gfuel is not sponsoring this video. This project is for educational purposes only. I will make the label available on Discord, but please do not use it for commercial purposes. This label is a copy of others' professional graphic concepts and artwork for Gfuel products, and I am in no way trying to pass this off as my own. Though that is more than obvious here, it's probably better to cover all my bases and say all of that anyway. Okay, let's get started. So we're going to start in Photoshop, but first we need Gfuel label dimensions. A quick Google search brought me to this label posted on Gfuel's Twitter account, so when I right-click it, I find the dimensions for it, and these will be the dimensions that I plug into the Photoshop project template. I'll start by making a red rectangle followed by some thinner black rectangles, which I will duplicate and place evenly down the red rectangle to make a striped pattern. Then we will go into the layers and merge these shapes so that they are one layer altogether. Now that that is merged, we will go into our Filters tab and find Liquify, where we will mess around with the pressure and size and other settings of the brush, then click and drag our mouse over the design until we get that classic Pewdiepie design we all know and love, or at least something close to it. You can always hit cancel and go back into Liquify and start over, as this may take several tries before you get something that you like. You may also want to go back to previous steps and adjust the size and number of your rectangles for a different result. Okay, once you are done, you now have your background, so we can start making the label, parts, and design to go along with it. Use the Move tool and free transform controls to shape it so that it takes up the entire space. I'll start by making a white rectangle on the bottom and adjusting it. I will be changing this rectangle to red later on, but in this recording I made it white for some reason. Then I'll make another slimmer rectangle, make it black, and place it above the white rectangle. Notice how these rectangles appear as new shapes in the layer panel on the right. Next I will go to the rectangle tool on the left and select the rounded rectangle and create a smaller black rounded rectangle and center it, and then round out the edges of it even more. Next, we will bring in the Gfuel Energy Fuel logo to put on the design. I found this on Google Images. What we will have to do here is remove the logo from the background, so we will select with the Quick Selection tool, which looks like this. Then we will paint our selection onto the layer and select only the words Gfuel. You can hold Alt while painting to erase part of your selection if you make a mistake. Once that is selected, go down to Add a Mask, and the Gfuel will be isolated as its own layer, where we can now center it as needed. Bring in that same logo from your files again, but this time use the quick selection tool to select Energy Fuel. Add a mask and center the Energy Fuel beneath the Gfuel as needed. To match the real design, we want a black border around a white font, so to do this, we double-click the free space of that layer to bring up the layer styles. Go to Color Overlay and select White. Then go to Stroke and make the stroke black and adjust the thickness of the stroke to get the desired effect. Okay, now I will go to Gfuel's website and find the Pewdiepie Gfuel and right-click on it to save the picture of it and bring it into Photoshop to look at it as a reference. We can always hide it with the eyeball tool here in the Layers panel. We will also be grabbing the colors from the design using the eyedropper tool, shortcut I, once we get going. But for now we're doing the line work for the berries, so we will make a new layer to begin. We will select the brush tool and adjust the hardness of the brush up here. We will change our brush to white and start copying what we see on the design. Use the eraser tool, shortcut E, if you mess up. I'm using a tablet and don't have the steadiest hand, so I will be speeding this up. I'm only using the color white for now because I can't really see what I'm doing if I use the color black. Though my line work isn't complete, I made another layer here to serve as the color layer, where I start coloring in the berries using blue, just so I can, again, better see what I'm doing. I go back and change the color by double-clicking on its layer to bring up the layer styles again and change the color overlay to match the design. Ideally, you want your line work to be a separate layer from your color layer, but I lose track often and mix them up, which is why you'll see me making more layers than necessary to paint over some of my errors. Each berry has a base color, shadow, and a highlight, with a mid-tone between the base color and the highlight. So what we're doing here is selecting these shades from the design with the eyedropper tool, again shortcut I, and using them in our copy the exact same way. As a side note, when you see an arrow on a layer pointing down to the layer underneath it, it means that the layer on top will affect only what's included in that layer underneath it. If I didn't explain that properly, I use this so that once I've made my base color layer, the layer on top, with the arrow, will only color inside that color layer and not go outside the lines. You will see many Photoshop artists use this, as it is super awesome and helps to create cleaner artwork. To access it, you hold Alt between the top and the bottom layer you want to work with, and left click. You can shift select those two layers and right click to merge those layers once you're happy with it, so that it becomes a single layer. After I'm done coloring and outlining those main berries, I can move them below the Gfuel logo in the layer panel so that the Gfuel logo remains in front. Now I will select the Gfuel logo in my layers and use the quick selection tool to select only the black border around it. We will then go up and copy this selection and then paste special, paste in place. This has pasted an extra border on top of the already existing one. We will go into layer styles and select gradient overlay and play around with the settings until the gradient looks like what it does in the logo. Okay, now we will go to our text tool and click, and it will automatically type in some Latin to show some sample text, but we will just delete that and type Pewdiepie in all caps. We will then select the font to something similar to the label, which I found to be Franklin Gothic Medium, and switch it from regular to italic style. Then we will go into its layer styles, give it a white stroke as well as a red fill, and once that is done, we will resize and play with the character spacing and such in the properties panel over here, until it is a nice size. Then we will add more text underneath it about the supplement size and adjust the text the same way. For this font, I chose HP Simplified Regular. Once that is complete, I make a new layer to begin the line work for the splashes in white. These are on a layer of their own so they don't mess up or interfere with the nice berries that we just made. Now I make another layer and work on the coloring portion, laying out the first base color of the splashes. You can adjust the opacity of the layer you're working with in the Layers panel over here, so that you can better see what's underneath and better see what you're doing. You can also change it back whenever you want to. For this particular line, I made a vector with the pen tool, clicking on points at which the vector curves, dragging it out a bit to make a better curve, before meeting it back at the first point. After that, we continue to color the splashes using the shades taken from the design. I take a break from this to add more text in places before continuing the line work. I use a new layer for this new line work to make it further confusing and disorganized for everyone, including myself. Sorry, it's just how I was working on this project, and my attention at the time was all over the place. Don't let all these layers intimidate you either. You can use as many layers as you want to get your desired result, whatever you feel comfortable with. Layers are very forgiving tools. You can be more organized than I am when working on a project, creating a layer for your line work, base color, midtones, shadows, and highlights, so you don't get confused and can edit them more easily. You can also even rename them in the Layers panel by double-clicking on them. Unlike the mess I'm creating here. Remember, the layers you want on top of everything should be at the top of your Layers panel, and to bring something behind another layer, you would drag it below that layer. It's pretty straightforward for any new Photoshop people out there. After we've colored all of our berries and splashes and they all look good and delicious, we're going to bring in that original Gfuel label we found on Google in the very beginning and box select all of these icons and copy each of them and add a new layer and paste them into those new layers and then position them accordingly. We need the nutrition label too, so for that I took a screenshot of the label on Gfuel's website and brought that screenshot into our project so that I could crop it out and position it on our label here, because it did not give me the option to actually save it to my hard drive when I right-clicked on it. So I continue to box select and copy and paste the rest of the label onto our project. Here I make a black box and then type in these letters followed by the date on which I made this label. It's really just bullshitting at this point. I really didn't know what to put here. For the lightning icon, I copied and duplicated the lightning bolt again and manually erased all the surrounding black. Then for the other icons, it was more of the same, using vectors and shapes. For the eyeball, I also made a white circle, but gave it a thick red stroke to mimic that negative space in the middle. Then for the Endurance Man, I played around resizing and rotating rounded rectangles and a circle for the head before I got what I wanted. Then I merged those shapes together to make one layer to easily move around. The last icon was the hand, so after a lot of searching I found a Gfuel picture where I could sort of copy the vector of the hand with the pen tool. Then I duplicated it with just the stroke and no fill at a lower opacity, and then another copy of that at an even lower opacity behind it. Then I found the Gamma Labs logo and quick selected that in there and adjusted the color. This logo is actually red on the real Pewdiepie Gfuel tub. There are a couple other small things I added, but nothing new from what we learned here. It's all more of the same, and I use the same tools for 99% of my projects. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Once again, this completed label will be on Discord as is, so you can see all the layers created and follow along with the video. And once again, this label is for educational purposes only. I like doing videos like these to show how what we learn in these programs can be used to make real-world designs. It makes learning more interesting. So stay tuned for the next tutorial where we will be applying this label to a 3D Gfuel tub and adding splashes to it to make it look cool. We may need to go back into Photoshop and make some adjustments as the logos appear to be too small for these current renders. But anyway, I will see you in the next one.